Hey, welcome everybody to the Performance Shift Podcast. That's what we got to do. I was already muted already this morning. How's everybody doing? What's going on, Kat?
Everything is great, John. We are 3 years post-pandemic, and unmuting is still the change that we need to figure out.
Hey, so if you have wondered what it takes to achieve like remarkable success, you're going to really love this podcast. And we're just getting started. We have been doing this for talking for at least a few years now, and we've always been pushing each other to kind of transform. We just thought that we just host a show. So
we're so delighted to invite everybody else into our conversations.
Yeah, it's really been amazing for this whole time to just have these conversations on Saturday mornings, through the pandemic, and then just on. And so so we want to share, like Kat, so we want to share this with you. And before we kind of jump too far in, we just want to explain who we actually are. My name is John Register, and I'm a two-time and two-sport Paralympic athlete. I'm a keynote speaker, and I've worked for the United States Olympic Committee. I've done some work with the United States Army. I'm four-time All-American with the Arkansas Razorbacks. And as a professional speaker now, I really try to help people hurdle adversity, overcome adversity, and shift and change things in their life. And I matched up with Kat Koppet. And so I want her to explain her brilliance to you right now as we get ready to dive into our conversation today.
Yeah, I've heard you say that a lot of times now. And it never ceases to impress me, John. I just have to pause for a minute and say, you sort of rattle off, yeah, I'm a two-time Paralympic athlete, medalist, blah, 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 blah. Like, you're a very impressive person. And that's sort of like the least impressive part of it. So I will introduce myself in a minute, but before I did, I just sort of wanted to pause there. We've been having these conversations for 3 years, and we've known each other much longer than that. It's been one of the great gifts of these weird times that I've got to spend this time with you, and we've gotten to have these conversations. So my half of the introduction is I'm an improviser. It's much simpler. I improvise on stage. I have an improvisational theater company called the Mopco Improv Theater here in upstate New York. And then I've spent many years applying the principles and techniques of improv to all sorts of other non-theatrical stages, mostly organizational development. I have a master's in organizational psychology, which is how we met. And so we'll talk more about that.
One of the things, and so thank you for sharing that. Yes, I do fly over my introduction pretty quick because I just want to get on to what's the most important thing. We had a Facebook user come on. I wanted to share that with you. I'm not sure what your name is. Please send me as a comment and then share with everybody else that's out there. So they're saying my voice is coming through loud and clear. Oh, that's good. I hope Kat's coming through loud and clear as well. So if you have a comment or you're sharing this out with everybody else, we will make sure that we're putting you up there on the stage, because we want to hear your voice and have a dialogue and have a conversation with this show. I think one of the things that I have make sure. Oh, Jeannie Snyder. All right, so it's Jeannie Snyder from Georgia. Yes, Jeannie, thank you for being on. I appreciate that. She is in the Georgia National Speakers Association chapter. I went down there to speak for them. It was a wonderful, fantastic event. Jeannie is a fantastic hostess. And so thank you so much, Jeannie, for being on this morning on our inaugural kind of podcast. I don't know if it's called a podcast or a streamcast or whatever the thing might be today.
We're co-creating.
Procreating. So together we're kind of sharing these insights that we've learned. And I wanted to kind of jump in and why I think that Kat is so brilliant and kind of the space I was in when we first met. And so here's another one coming in, Improvcast. You know that one?
Improvcast.
Improvcast.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for being on. So I didn't know too much about improv. I mean, I saw like Whose Line Is It Anyway or things like that, but I really wasn't into the improv scene. And I was struggling when I was working for the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, trying to figure out how I could get the athletes, the Olympic class and the Paralympic athletes, to tell their stories better. I, as a professional speaker, didn't have the chops at that point in time to take them the distance of what I thought could be the best thing. So I was out as a coach. I just ran out of stuff, and I was beyond my capacity. So I hired a group called Performance of a Lifetime. Kat was leading that team.
Kathy Salid and a bunch of folks that on the applied improv side, a lot of my colleagues will know. Wonderful folks.
Oh my God. So yeah, there was another woman too that was out of Washington, D.C. area that she came in.
Shannon Polly.
Shannon Polly. Yes, Shannon Polly.
A long roster of sort of stars in the firmament of applied improvisation.
Just brilliant.
Those doors. Yep.
Brilliant people. And so they came out, started working with the athletes, and quickly they found that the athletes took information and feedback so fast. I was mesmerized by it. And the athletes started coming to me during the breaks and saying, "Hey, we need to move quick, faster. It feels like it's dragging on a little bit." And that's because I found out later, because like in the corporate world, it's very difficult to get people to play the games. It's very difficult to get people to take feedback and then implement really fast. But athletes do it naturally. They're very quick in taking feedback. They're very fast because they know that they only have a limited amount of time for going to the Paralympic Games or the Olympic Games. And the coaching staff that they put extreme trust in. And everybody is driving for one direction. So they don't have time to be questioning things. They want to fail quickly in order to make things happen. And I saw Kat made the shift really quickly to the team, and they were extremely happy with that shift. What were you thinking about during that time? What was your impression as we were out there in Chula Vista?
It's really interesting to hear you tell that story and what you remember, and that pivot is what you remember most. Of course, what I remember is just how exceptional, of course, in retrospect, that was an exceptional group of people. I mean, there's the difference that you see that you're pointing to between athletes and a general corporate audience, but we're also just talking about elite performance. In any field, what separates those folks who are the most elite performers, the most exceptional folks from the rest of us. And, we were dealing with the most elite folks. And so I think there's a lot to learn. And you just put your finger on one of them, which was the openness to feedback and learning, and the trust that those athletes had in their coaches. Even us strangers who were coming in, they were like, "Okay, you have something to teach us. We are willing to go with you. We're going to err on the side of believing you and trusting you and doing what you tell us and taking the feedback. And, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but we're going to try it first." And then what I hear you saying back to us is we needed to be practicing what we were preaching, which was to be able to read the room and pivot and take feedback from you and then give what was needed rather than just whatever our habitual way of being might have been.
It was interesting, and I think what you're saying in the pivot so quickly is, and what I love about applied improv, which I was just learning. I was like, oh my gosh, because the second time we did it, I think was in Chicago or something, or just another place, and I became a participant because I saw how this could help in my speaking career as well, in helping to what I call now improv the audience, right? So taking the feedback and really understanding that it's not me going one directional and just, spewing information out. It's really to get the information back in a feedback loop that elevates the room. So now I call myself the facilitator of the brilliance that's already in the room, right? So that's
beautiful.
And that was one of the gifts that you gave. I know that you had a special story around that. Hopefully we might get him on as one of our first guests. But can you kind of just share generically about one of the athletes that you encountered and how this kind of applied improv worked in the sports world crossing the speaking world and into, like recovery, and how you and your mastery of this subject matter expertise really, shifted you, and how you saw this whole dynamic change a bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think this was true for a lot of your athletes. One of the things that we were working on was getting really specific with them about their stories. I mean, fundamentally, what you brought us in to do was help your athletes tell their stories in ways that were specific to them and for their audience in any given moment. Right? So these are Paralympic athletes. For anyone who doesn't know, the Paralympics are the games that are parallel to the Olympic Games. You'll tell me if I'm saying this right. For athletes who have physical disabilities or visual impairments, right? So super elite athletes, not the Special Olympics, that's something else, right? At least as impressive athletes as the sort of Olympic athletes that we're mostly paying attention to. And they are often told, oh, you're incredibly inspiring, simply because they're doing elite sport of any kind with a physical disability or visual impairment, because that's the sort of bias in our system. Right? But there's a way that story can be genericized, right? We get habitual in the way we tell it. I was able-bodied and then I had an accident, or I was born with a disability and then I became an elite athlete and then this happened and this happened, as opposed to getting really specific about what is my key message, what is a specific moment, who is my audience, what am I trying to tell them, which is different if I'm talking to family members or athletes who, folks who may just have been recovering from an injury, or the media around some incident that, right? So
Yeah,
I'm telling this to you. How did I do? Did I get that right?
yeah. I think, with the athletes, there's always that. There's always this kind of what I call this riches to rags to riches story, or overcoming the monster, overcoming the adversity story. That is a generic way to tell the story, and we think that is the most important story that we have to tell. But in fact, it's probably not the most important story that's in our lives. But people on the outside externally will see that, and they will think that story is the most important thing, or that's the thing that we've overcome. And I as an athlete, Paralympic athlete, and an amputee, I was caught up in that. I was caught up in thinking that what I overcame was the amputation of my left leg. And for years, I was thinking the same thing, but that wasn't it. And as soon as I discovered that I didn't overcome the amputation of my left leg, because if I did so, I would have my leg back. That's
No.
what was it then? What did I truly overcome? Because that's a past state, a past reality for me. And so I think that was the thing I was beginning to learn and unpack and uncover, that we usually don't overcome the thing that was the shift or the press or the challenge that was in our life, because that is in a past state. It's really our mindset around it. So that's how, in this show, how we're really trying to get you and the audience and ourselves, and really learn in this state, that the thing that we think we overcome is not really probably the thing that we overcome. And we can use tools and tactics like applied improv to understand and use tactics on how to overcome those other challenges that might come up intellectually, mentally, and physically, to help us achieve greater. So what do you think? Is that right?
I think that was beautifully said. I think great way to focus back on what the podcast is about. And what I also love in this part of the conversation that we're having is that, just to sort of circle back to what you had said about, I think it was Sam Kavanaugh, whose story you were alluding to, but really it was true of all the athletes, was there's so much more, it's so much more complex, big change that we're going to be discovering, and what's really going on. And what do you really have to offer? It's not, we are not generic. Change is not generic. And there's so much more to offer, to discover, to share, than just that one sort of Uber story.
Right.
So hopefully Sam will come and tell his specific story to us. I think he may be our first guest, as you alluded
I hope so. The
but
what I
that's where we want to go. We want to share those stories, as you say. We want to share the tools of discovering them, but also you have a framework for having mapped your own journey
yes.
and your life, sort of traveling through your, your big transition of becoming an amputee and transforming your life in all sorts of ways,
Yeah.
that you guide people through. And we'll do some mashing up of those lessons that you've learned in very practical ways, along with whatever the philosophical improv principles and exercises I
I
have.
think there's that. Yeah, I think there's a framework, right? You have a framework in the work that you do to get businesses, companies, corporation executives to shift in their the way they're doing things, the way they're doing business. And I have over the years, and you've helped with this for sure, is developed a contextual model around how we overcome any adversity. It's not the model, it's just a model of how we actually can do this. And so I'll be sharing some of those thoughts, and Kat will be sharing some of her thoughts around how we overcome those adverse times in our life with those methodologies. I think the reason I think this is really important for the listener, the person that's listening to this podcast right now, is because you have your own voice. And because you have your own voice, that is like the starting point of really understanding how you will operate. And it seems easy to say that, but so many times we're following the crowd. I do it myself, right? And so I find myself getting caught up doing what somebody else is doing just because they're doing it. And I say, oh, that's the easier way, instead of really articulating my own voice. So when I was working with especially military service members, injured service members, to help them tell their journey stories later on in life. And one of the challenges was not everybody, just generic, many people that came back from Iraq or Afghanistan were injured in the same firefight. And so they lost limbs in the same firefight, or they're burned over their body in the same firefight. And as they began healing at like Brooke Army Medical Center or Walter Reed or San Diego Medical Center out in San Diego, California, Balboa Park area, their stories were very similar, and they wanted to share those stories with the world and say, I've overcome this obstacle. But what they didn't say was how they actually overcame it. Remember, I said earlier, if I overcame the amputation of my left leg, I'd have my leg back. And many of them were at that point in their story journey that they thought that what they overcame was actually that piece of their body missing, and that was going to be the thing that was going to shift other people, and that will do some a little bit. But really, in reality, it's people don't want our story. They want to know how our story actually impacts them. And so to really get granular into this, what I shared with them was this concept around, so what? I have 7 of you right now that are healing in the hospital. All of you want to tell your story. You all have the same storyline. I went to war. I lost my limb. I came back, and now I'm playing the guitar again with one hand. I'm running in the Paralympic Games, and you can do it too. But you can't. I don't want to go to war to lose my leg or lose my limb and do that. So we don't really, and that's the real conversation. We don't want to do that. We want to know how, in my toughest times in life, can I actually have a process by going through it. So that's where we began our work, is I would share with them and challenge them to say, so what? So what, you were blown up in Iraq? So what, you're blown up and you lost your limb? Why should I care? That was the second thing. Why should I care about that? And they were taken aback, probably like you all are out there, like taken aback by what I'm saying. But when you get down to it, I want to know why your story matters to you, the outcome that you have, in order for you to begin to relate it to someone else that's probably not going to go through it. It was the same thing with me. I won a silver medal, but most people aren't going to win a silver medal. And so how do I relate that story to an audience so that they can feel that they can win the medals in their lives as well? Your thoughts?
A number of them. One is that you've done a wonderful job of really reflecting on your own story, and not just your story, but your actual experience, and saying at various moments or various times throughout that change that I had to navigate, from uh, being uh, being in the service, right? Actually, and then having an accident, which actually had nothing to do with that. Spoiler alert. To right to having to recover and redefine myself, and the different phases of that, because it wasn't just one, right? To then becoming a Paralympic athlete and having that success, and then moving on and leading other folks through their journey, right? Your framework goes through all of the stages of that. And so one of the things that we want to share, and that you've been sharing in all of your work, is what are those different phases? What are what can you expect when you're in different phases of a change or shift in your life, regardless of what your shift or your life is?
Mhm.
Because for you, it may not be going to combat. For you, it may not be losing a limb. It may be a job shift, or moving, or getting married. It doesn't even have to be a quote negative change, but any big
Right.
change, you can sort of be going through these identity shifts, or what is the fear? What are the different there's so many things, right? So what are the different phases that you're going through? What are the expectations you may have? What are the corners to look around and expect? What are the tools that we can then offer to help you through those different phases of change? So that's one thing to look at. And then the other thing I heard in there is the idea of story. And at Koppet, we like to say story is meaning. It's a phrase we stole from the cognitive psychologist Jerome Bruner. And the idea is that story isn't just little anecdotes that we share, but it really is the way that our brains make sense of the world. And so both for ourselves as well as for others, what are the stories that we're telling? What are the stories that we're telling ourselves about our identity and about our value and about what's important and what matters? And then how are we articulating them and sharing them in ways that can be of service to those around us, to inspire them, complicated word, but also to help them help us, right? And help us get what we need to support us as we go through these big shifts.
Yeah, I know that's actually at 100% true, 100% right. And I like what you said, that stories, um, what was it, on the tools, story is meaning.
Yes, Jerome
And
Bruner. Yeah.
yeah, that's wonderful. Because they are, and I find that all the time. And just to kind of share with everybody, I'll share the contextual model really quickly, and then we'll dive deeper into it later. But I want to share a story around this mashup and how it actually works. And I'll do that. Hopefully, I can condense it.
Yeah.
But I don't want to sacrifice the story for the sake of time. So the contextual model that Kat continues to refer to is how we overcome adversity. I'll just put it loosely like that. My keynote speech now is called "Transform Adversity into Advantage: How to Conquer Life's Hurdles." I was a world-class hurdler, had the injury, as Kat alluded to, and then came back and won a Paralympic silver medal. We'll unpack that as well a little bit later. So the first part of how we overcome the adversity, the 5 hurdles I believe we have to get over. The first one is the reckoning moment. The reckoning moment is hurdled when we realize we do not get back what we desire to have back after some type of trauma has impacted our life. Once we've hurdled that, now we're into the revision. So we're recasting our vision. How does life look like for us now? But there are three things that hold us back from recasting our vision. The recast is actually a commitment to the vision that we have, and three things hold us back. Other people who believe for us what we can or cannot do, which is based on what they believe they could or could not do if they were in our situation, and society. Society has normalized us around some concepts, around some thoughts, actions, ideas, and we just kind of go along with the flow. The third thing that holds us back is ourselves. We don't commit to the jump that we know we have to do. We don't commit to jumping that second hurdle in this model. Once we do commit to the jump, then a commitment is very different than the reckoning moment where you can go back to where it used to be. The commitment is done. Once I amputate the left leg, I don't get my leg back. So that is a commitment. We cannot go back on any commitments. And I would argue that if you can go back on a commitment, you haven't made a commitment in the first place. So then that's tough. It's hard. It's hard medicine. We get into the rebirth. So the rebirth is we've made the commitment and now we have to give ourselves space and grace to grow because we don't have all the new information. And new in this context is no prior point of reference. So we have to learn things new. I had to learn how to walk on an artificial leg. That's new. I can't use old thoughts, old systems, old ideas to bring into that new space. But eventually I learned how to walk, I learned how to run, and learn how to jump over the course of 7 years in my case. And now I'm at a point of resolve. The resolve is I have done the work. I've done the homework to be in the next phase of my life. That's over the fourth hurdle. And then we get to the reward. For myself, maybe I win the silver medal in the Paralympic Games. So I've come through this whole journey. I celebrate that, but that's not a destination. It's only a plateau by which we grow. Because I can be at the reward in one area of my life and I can be at the reckoning moment in another area of my life. So my finances might be at the reckoning moment and I might have a relationship that's I'm about to commit to it, or I'm about to commit to a new job. I'm about to commit to, doing something in my life that causes a commitment to happen, or it might be in a rebirth area in another area of my life. So it's all layered. And then I can see where other people are in this contextual model. And instead of lording where I've come from over them, I now have the ability to empathize where they are. So if someone's ready to make a commitment to a jump in their life, I can say, you know what? I understand where you are. I had to make that commitment myself. And I know I can't do this for you, but we're going to walk this. I'm going to be with you every step of the way. You have to make that own jump, but but once you get to the rebirth, I'm going to walk you hand in hand, and we're going to do this together. So that's the framing of it. And I think we lost some of that during the pandemic, of how we shared with each other and how we showed up with each other, because we're all isolated as individuals, and that exasperated some things, and it brought some folks actually together, depending upon what was inside of them. Your thoughts?
I'm so excited. That was amazing that you did that in whatever 2 minutes that you did that. Right there is everything that we hope to talk about in this podcast for however many episodes we do. But I hope that our listeners will be excited by that and notice how rich a conversation there is to have about navigating change and transformation, and how many pieces there are, how deep it is. I think you're right. In some ways, the lockdown and pandemic years atrophied some muscles and isolated us from ourselves. And then there are other ways in which I think we are all forced together in a similar moment of transition and transformation and recognition that at any given moment, everything can change, and we may have to redefine ourselves and tell a completely new story. And nothing is, everything is temporary, and everything is in transformation all the time. So there are some ways that I know that this conversation came alive for us, and I'm just excited that we're starting to open it up and have it with everyone else.
Absolutely. So I want to thank everybody for being on today as for our first episode of Performance Shift Podcast. And we're going to have you're going to see all the banners coming up and everything. The thing I love about this is we just said, let's just start. Let's just go. Let's just have the conversation because we want people to be invited into this conversation. And we'll talk about the other piece because I don't want us to go too far a long time. We're at the top of the hour and give people some of their time back today. Any closing thoughts for you, Kat?
Just that we will be back here this same time, 9:30 Eastern, every Saturday morning, and then of course people can chime in, catch up whenever they like, and we look forward to continuing the conversation.
Yep. So invite your friends in. We're going to have this conversation. We're going to eventually have a little website out there so we can continue to grow this community because there's so many people out there that want to understand how to shift their performance and their performance shift. And so hit your notification bell on this wherever you're listening to so that you can be alerted when we go live. I always do that on podcasts that I love listening to. If I'm in the car and I forgot that's on and the notification just pops up. I did that for a show I was listening to this morning. So we'll see you here next week on another episode of The Performance Shift with myself, John Register, and Kat Koppet.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you later.